Welcome to RealGM Radio. Before we jump in, do me a favor and subscribe to our brand new YouTube channel to catch the podcast when we record live, tune into the best segments, and join the RealGM Radio community. It helps me, it helps you, it's a win-win. Find us on youtube.com/@RealGM Radio. It's RealGM Radio. I'm Wes Goldberg, and I have finalized my NBA award ballot, and I think I figured out a way to split the tie for MVP. All right, what's up? It's RealGM Radio, Monday monologue here. I finalized my NBA awards ballot, and as I promised, I am going to share it with you today. We might go a little bit longer than normal for the Monday monologue, but just because there's a lot to get to here, I'm going to start with the All-NBA teams. I'm going to get to some of the other awards. I'm going to finish up with MVP, so we're going to build up to that. Not going to do All-Rookie. That's the only All-Rookie teams. Not going to have that just out of the interest of time, and it's frankly not all that interesting. But let's jump in right away, and I'm going to start with my All-NBA teams. So, for the record, I don't have an official ballot. I am a participant in the Bontemps straw poll over at ESPN. I also keep track of this all year, and I do submit ballots to some other various media places that put these together. And so this is the ballot that I had submitted last Friday. So this was my final unofficial official ballot, my official RealGM Radio ballot. So let's start with All NBA first team. The first four, I don't know how you have anything other than Shai, Jokic, Giannis, Tatum. I don't know. It would be crazy if any of those should be unanimous. There is no argument to leave any of these guys off your top four. There's no argument. I have seen the fifth spot sort of debated here. I went ahead with Donovan Mitchell. Okay, I've had Donovan Mitchell here all season long. I value everything that he's bringing to Cleveland. If you want to go Steph, I've seen Anthony Edwards in there. I get it. But this to me is an award for the entire season. And to me, from wire to wire, even if Donovan Mitchell hasn't had the sensational highs as somebody like Steph Curry or isn't averaging the points per game that Anthony Edwards is, and obviously Edwards is doing just amazing stuff in Minnesota, I value what Donovan Mitchell has done, not just because the Cavs have won a bunch of games, but look, I watched the games, right? If you want to go Anthony Edwards because of the stats, that's fine. And it's really hard to argue Donovan Mitchell over Anthony Edwards when you get to the stats. But if we're just going to go by stats, then why do we watch these games? Why am I watching the Cavs all season long? If at the end of the year I can just look at the stats and be like, well, Ant's stats are better, so he has to be over Donovan Mitchell. I think Mitchell's been better, and I don't care what the stats say. He's been more steady. He's been really important to a team with one of the best records in the league. I think his leadership is huge, and I think that should be a factor. It shouldn't just be all stats and nothing else. His leadership that he's shown, and Katie Heindel and I talked about this last week, it's just remarkable what he has done in taking a real cognitive step back in terms of choosing to take that step back in terms of production for the betterment of the team. And by the way, his stats are still good. It's not as if his stats are bad. And the advanced metrics like Donovan Mitchell more than Anthony Edwards and stuff too. So there is still like on-off court number stuff that boosts Donovan Mitchell's case here. So it's not as if he's not productive and if this doesn't show up in the stats, but he's been awesome. And the thing I can't get past with Anthony Edwards, and I do love Anthony Edwards, his lows are just so low. Like there are nights where it feels like he doesn't know how to make a pass, and the jumper's just not going in, and he just feels really ineffective. And there's some games where it just feels like he shouldn't even be on the floor for Minnesota. You never feel like that about Donovan Mitchell. So I know Mitchell's had a little bit of a shooting slump here at the end of the season. There's been some health issues and stuff like that, but to me, wire to wire, he's been better. He's been better than Steph. Steph was just not that good at the beginning of the year. You could give me reasons why, and I hear it. No Jimmy Butler, a lot of stuff on his shoulders, whatever. There's the injury towards the end of the season now, and he's been nursing that, all this stuff. But it is what it is with him, right? And I could see the case for Steph getting on your first team, and I've seen people do it. Overall, I think I'm okay with it, I guess. It feels like you're rewarding the second half of the season and ignoring the first half of the season when Donovan Mitchell was clearly the better player, playing better. And I've seen Cade Cunningham in the mix here too. Feels just a little too hipster for me. I'm not ready to go all the way there. I've got Donovan Mitchell here, and I really didn't even have to think that hard about it. So that's my first team, all NBA. Second team, all NBA. And just remember, 65 game rule, positionless. I think we all know that by now. Second team, I had Steph. I had Jalen Brunson. I had Cade. I had LeBron, and I had Mobley. Mobley, to me, in Penn, all second team. I had no question about it. I think his two-way impact has been sensational. He's going to be a Defensive Player of the Year. He is a Defensive Player of the Year finalist, or I guess he will be a Defensive Player of the Year finalist. Steph, we just talked about him. He was in the running. He's on some people's first teams. I don't, again, not my favorite thing, but to me, he's a surefire second team guy. And then I think Cade, I've seen him everywhere from first team to third team. I guess I'm splitting the difference. I'm putting him on second team. I just think he's been so good. The assists, the shooting, what he's been doing with a Pistons roster that I think it's maybe too harshly criticized for being bad. I think it's fine, but it's also not. When you compare Cade's supporting cast to like all these other guys, it's clearly several notches below that, right? Like he's not playing with the Wizards, but he also doesn't have the supporting cast that somebody like Jalen Brunson does on the Knicks. But Brunson is clearly their best player. Again, in the straw poll, I see people putting Karl Anthony Towns, giving him MVP votes. I don't even think he's the best player on his own team. I don't think he's the most valuable player on his. Jalen Brunson, to me, is the straw that stirs that drink, and I love Cat, but I love the season that Cat has had. He's about to make an appearance here. But I went Brunson. To me, he's the best Knick, and he's been awesome. He's been awesome all season when he's been out there, when he's been healthy, and just maybe you forgot about him because of the injuries, but or maybe the voters did because of when his injury was, but he's been great. And then LeBron. I don't know what to say about this guy. This is a little bit of a second part of the season award. I could hear the argument if you wanted to move. This was the hardest part. So I moved LeBron to third team and then Ant up to second team. That was something I debated. The first couple of months for LeBron were pretty bad defensively. It's as bad as I've seen LeBron defensively. Then he started to kick it up a notch a little bit, and then obviously he's been better ever since the Luka trade. But I do think on balance, the stats are awesome. He's played a bunch. He's been really important to that Lakers team. Again, you could say, well, look at this team that got all the breaks, but then you can also say the only common denominator throughout a Lakers season in which they finished third in the Western Conference has been LeBron, right? Anthony Edwards was there playing sensational, then he got hurt, then he gets traded, then Luka comes in. He's not available at first, then he comes back in. He's got to work his way in the line. LeBron has been really, really damn good all season long for the Lakers. And it's also LeBron James, and I think that counts for something, okay? Just like it counts for something for Steph. These guys make my second team. I debated it a little bit, didn't debate it that hardly. Anthony Edwards headlines my third team. Again, you'll see him as the fifth guy on some people's all-NBA ballots on their first team. I love Anthony Edwards, man. I don't want this to be an anti-Ant thing, but I can't shake the fact that his lows are just lower than any other star sort of in that Anthony Edwards tier when we're talking about the top 10 or 12 guys in the league. It just, to me, he just feels like he struggles at times and some of these other guys don't. And maybe it's just a visceral thing. It's a visual thing for me. But I also look at this Minnesota Timberwolves roster and I think it should have been better. Even with the Cat trade and all this stuff, you should have been better than where you were for most of the season. And Anthony Edwards does not deserve all the blame for that, but some of the decision-making stuff, some of the things with him, it just feels like the numbers aren't empty calories. I am not saying that, but it feels like of the 27 points per game, are 3 of them empty calories per game? Maybe. It's a pretty wholesome meal, but there's just a couple of French fries on the side that maybe you didn't really need with Ant sometimes. So I got him. I still have him all NBA. I still have him one of the best 15 guys in the league. It's not an anti-Ant thing. I'm splitting hairs here between him and the other guards, and I just feel like the other guards impacted winning in a much bigger way, and they were way more consistent than Ant was. And I value consistency on a game-to-game basis quite a bit. So I've got Ant still on my third team. I've got Halliburton on my third team. Admittedly, this is definitely a second half of the season award. I debated Halliburton versus Siakam. I asked some Pacers people. Halliburton's still the guy. He's still the guy. This is maybe 10% reputation, but he's also been really damn good this second half of the season. And that also counts for something, right? And I'm going to talk a little bit more later on when we get to Defensive Player of the Year about how great you are in a smaller sample versus how good you are over a larger sample and how that should factor into things and why that should matter, if it should matter at all. But for Halliburton, for third team, it matters. If a bunch of other guys had qualified because of the 65 game rule, maybe Halliburton doesn't make my ballot. We're getting into that point now where I felt pretty good no matter who was available. Those top 11 were going to be there. First team, second team, and then Anthony Edwards. These four guys, starting with Halliburton, this is where availability helps them a little bit. I got Jaren Jackson Jr. on my fifth team. I couldn't get him higher than that, but he has been the most consistent Grizzly. I got to be honest, I don't feel awesome about it, but we're splitting hairs here. He's been really good for Memphis. It's not his fault that they are where they are. He's actually probably the reason they are where they are in a good way. Like, it could have been a lot worse had Jaren Jackson not been healthy or not been as productive as he was. So he really carried that Grizzlies team on both ends. I think defensively, you're going to see him in the mix for Defensive Player of the Year. He's not there for me, but he's in the mix for some people. And then offensively, he's had the best season of his career. So I have him here. Karl Anthony Towns, again, sensational for the Knicks. His best offensive season of his career for me, in my opinion. I think the numbers back that up, but to me, I just watch him, and he's just much more decisive offensively. He knows where he's going. You know, I've likened it to his drives in Minnesota sometimes would just be like aimlessly wandering towards the basket like he was in a grocery store without a shopping list. And he knew he had to get to the register at some point, but he wasn't really sure how he was going to do it. And now Karl Anthony Towns is just going straight to the bread aisle, getting what he needs, and then leaving right through self-checkout. And I think that's been awesome. I love the decisiveness with his game. Rebounding, he's been better. I think the physicality, he's actually amped it up a little bit here. And then carried that Knicks team for a while when Jalen Brunson was hurt. So a little weird that I have two Knicks on my All-NBA, but I don't really think anybody else has been all that good except for this late push by OG Anunoby, and that's really it. So there it is. And then my fifth pick, I've got Ivica Zubac. I've got Zubac, man. I debated between Zubac and Durant for this last spot, but Durant got hurt. He didn't meet the 65 game criteria. He only played the 62 games. And I go Zubac. And honestly, man, I feel awesome about this. I love the season that Zubac has had. I think he's been one of the best five centers in the league, no question. That might be even underselling it this season. When he's doing defensively, he was sort of on my short list for Defensive Player of the Year ballot. Like, he's been that good. And Clippers fans will tell you he might be the most underrated guy in the league, and I think they have a great point. He's also awesome offensively. We heard last year after James Harden got there, how him and Harden and Zubac got together a bunch and practiced their pick and roll and all that stuff. And you're really starting to see the fruits of that this season, or you have seen the fruits of that this season. The production's there. He had a triple-double the other day. Like, this isn't just a positional defender who rebounds the snot out of the ball anymore. Like, he is putting up numbers now. And I think a lot of people will put Harden on All-NBA if they had to put a Clipper on there. I just think Zubac has been better. I think he's been more important to that team, as crazy as it sounds, because of what he does defensively for a team that is number 2 in the league in defensive rating. You know, Zubac is the backbone of that. Like, Derrick Jones Jr., Chris Dunn, those guys are awesome out on the perimeter. Kawhi, when he really wants to amp it up, obviously is still really great. But Zubac makes it possible because he's just so solid by the basket. He lets them be a little bit more aggressive out there, chase guys off the line, all that kind of stuff. I think he's been awesome. And I love the fact that I'm able to reward him for a great season by putting him on my third team All-NBA. So that's my first, second, and third team All-NBA. Like I said, we're already past the usual length of the Monday monologue, and we're just starting to getting into this thing. I'm going to try to speed up the rest of this stuff. First team All-Defense. I've got Lou Dort, Dyson Daniels, Amen Thompson, Draymond Green, Evan Mobley. Second team All-Defense. Tumani Kamara, Jalen Williams, Jaren Jackson Jr., Bam Adebayo, and Zubac. Thought about putting OG Anunoby on here. Maybe the hardest cut guy on the bubble there. Again, a bunch of guys didn't qualify. Rudy Gobert, maybe over Jaren Jackson Jr. Again, I'm not as high on Jaren Jackson defensively as some other people are. I love him. I have him on my All-NBA team. I'm just not there with him in terms of Defensive Player of the Year. I've seen him in Penn. You know, people mention Jaren Jackson Jr. in Penn for all-defensive first team. He just fouls too much, and he doesn't stay on the court, and he fouls out at the end of really big games all the time. And that matters to me. And I think about a guy like Bam and Zubac, they don't foul. And Draymond Green said this the other day about Jaren Jackson Jr. after the last time the Warriors played the Grizzlies, and he said he's too. I agreed with him. He said, Jaren's too experienced at this point to still be fouling out in these games, and he's 100% right. And I would love to see if Draymond's words come back to bite him in this play-in game on Tuesday night between the Warriors and the Grizzlies, and see if Jaren Jackson Jr. heeds his words and says, you know what, I am too experienced. And let's see if he is at the end of this game, in an obviously very important game there in the play-in tournament. So I knocked him down. Jalen Williams, to me, was a second-team All-NBA, or rather, all-defensive guy. That was easy. He was, you could argue he's Oklahoma City's best defender. I wouldn't. I've seen it argued. I think it's Lou Dort by a mile. I don't need the advanced stats to tell me that, even though a lot of them back me up. Some of them don't. Some of the on-off stuff loves Dort. Some of it doesn't. Whatever. I watch a lot of Thunder games, and that guy seems essential to a dominant defense, and he's going to be in the mix for Defensive Player of the Year for me. But Jalen Williams, specifically when Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren was out and he was playing the 5, he's had to guard guys on the perimeter. He's just had to do everything. He's their ultimate Swiss Army knife, even more than Dort is, even though Dort is extremely versatile in his own right. But Jalen Williams was awesome. He deserves recognition. I'm glad I was able to get Tamani Kamara on here. He's sensational. Like, that guy is such a warrior defensively. He works his tail off. He's really long. He's super skilled. It's not just a hard work thing. He's really talented on that end. I don't think Bam's going to make all defense this year, and that's a shame. It's 5 years in a row for Bam. You can accuse me of this being a homer pick. I don't think there's been 10 better defenders in the league this season than Bam. Admittedly, it has not been Bam's best defensive season, and I don't have him in the running for Defensive Player of the Year, where I think I've had him as a Defensive Player of the Year, maybe my favorite for Defensive Player of the Year. 2 of the last 3 years, maybe all 3 of the last 3 years. He's not there for me this year, but I still couldn't think of 10 better defenders. I don't think it's been an awesome Gobert season. I think the stats are what they are. I just think he's been beaten a little bit too much for my liking on the perimeter, more than usual. But Bam's super versatile. He does everything. He covers up everything. And for a Heat team that doesn't have a lot of high-level defenders, the fact that they're still in the top 10 defensively in defensive rating, that's all Bam. And he played a bunch of games this year, played a ton of minutes, and the effort has been there every single night. So I think the stink on the Heat because of the Jimmy Butler trade, and also because of Bam and how bad he was offensively this year, for most of this year, even though he came on strong in the second half of the season. I think people are going to look at that and just say, hey, Bam's been bad this year. You can argue he's been bad offensively. That's fine. He's been almost as good as he's been defensively, and I think he's clearly an all-defense guy. I think the streak for him should extend to 6 straight seasons, but I don't think it's going to be. I think too many people wrote off the Heat and Bam way too early, and that's unfortunate. But I'd love to be proven wrong. First team was really easy for me. Dort, Daniels, Amen Thompson, Draymond, Evan Mobley. Tell me 5 defenders that were better this year. Tell me a defender that was better than any of those guys this year. I won't hear it. Like, those are the best guys. All right, we are done with the All-NBA teams. Let's go to 6th Man of the Year. Today's episode of RealGM Radio is brought to you by Game Time. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA playoff tickets. With last-minute deals, save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. With zone deals, save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seat. Toggle on all-in pricing to see the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. And with Seat Views, you'll get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And with Game Time ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. I have Malik Beasley, and I feel really good about it. I had Peyton Pritchard for most of the season, but I ended up going Beasley because it just felt like Pritchard faded a little bit, where I thought Pritchard was one of the 3 or 4 most important Celtics through the first half of the season. It felt like Celtics fans were just waiting. Like, there were some games when the Celtics weren't making a bunch of threes. And remember, they kind of, as a team, got started. They kind of were in a little bit of a slump to start the year. There was a point this season where it felt like Celtics fans were just waiting for Peyton Pritchard to come into these games. And you could feel it, and he was awesome, and he deserves a lot of credit. This was pretty close for me between Pritchard or Beasley. I just think Beasley, on balance, for most of the year has just been better. His first half maybe was 10% worse than Pritchard's, but his second half was like 30% better. For a Pistons team that doesn't have a lot of options, like it's Cade Cunningham, that's really it. Especially after Ivy went down, and Schroeder has not been awesome for them. So Beasley is just relief bucket after relief bucket for them. He's been hugely important to them. This is almost like most valuable sixth man for me, which is not technically what the award is, but I think it's really important. I think he's been awesome. And it was splitting hairs between Beasley and Pritchard, and I ultimately with Beasley just because I think he's more important to the Pistons. Even if you could argue that Pritchard is the better player overall, which I think that's fair. But I had him as a close second. I went Ty Jerome third. on this one. Coach of the year. This is a two-man race between Kenny Atkinson and Jamie Bickerstaff. I had Ime Udoka as my third. I would hear Mark Dagnall. I'd hear Joe Mazzulla. I'd hear all of it. I went Udoka third. I feel fine about it. I ultimately went with Atkinson as my coach of the year. I just think what he's doing is so hard. To me, this is a degree of difficulty question. Is it harder to take a team that had no foundation and create that foundation like Bickerstaff did? Really hard. Again, two-man race between him and Atkinson. Really hard. Or is it harder to do what Atkinson did, which was build on top of that foundation without many real roster changes at all, tweak things just enough, and go from kind of afterthought playoff team to legitimate championship contender? I think the degree of difficulty for that is way harder. I just think that is something that very few coaches are capable of doing. And Atkinson has been awesome. He's transformed the vibe on that team. They are super confident in a way that we've never seen them be this confident. They do feel like they could win the championship this year. I'm not telling you I've been around the team all year. I've just been around them once or twice this season when they've been in Miami. But, talking to people in Cleveland, stuff like that, there is a real vibe around that team. And I think that helps. And then obviously the records are what it is. Like, they've been awesome. 2 separate 15-game win streaks. They've been sensational all year. And from the moment they started the year on a 15-game win streak, it was immediate with Atkinson. So I just think that the job he did, the degree of difficulty of that is ridiculous. I'm going to most improved now. Zubac, number 2 on my list. Ty Jerome, number 3 on my list. I think there's a lot of guys you can put on here. I consider Dyson Daniels. He's one of the favorites on this, according to the sports books. Is it opportunity? They never got in New Orleans. I just have a hard time parsing through it, so I just kind of left him off my ballot. I just sort of quit on the Dyson Daniels most improved thing just because it was kind of, I couldn't figure out. It's hard to parse. Guy barely played in New Orleans, plays a bunch in Atlanta. It turns out, is he just good? It turns out he's good. Or did he grow into this player and earn more playing time going from one team to the other? I don't know. So I just left him off my ballot. I went Tyler Hero, number 1. He's not going to win this award. I think he should. I've made the case on the Athletic NBA show. I made the case on Locked On Heat. I think what Tyler Hero did, you can look at the numbers, and the numbers are great. The numbers have a most improved argument just in and of itself. The guy goes from 20 points per game to 23. Improved efficiency. The three-point shooting has been way better. He's been one of the best three-point shooters of the league this season. All that stuff is there. The rebounding is up. The assists are up. We can go further. The guy was called fragile by Pat Riley at the end of season, in his end of season press conference last year. He's played some of the most. He's top 10 in minutes played this season. Played 70 plus games this year. If you just want to make the durability argument in terms of most improved, a guy that was fragile his entire career all of a sudden was an Iron Man for Miami this year. Played among the most minutes in the league of any player this season. There's a most improved player case right there. But I'll take it one step even further than that. Dramatically changed his outlook as an offensive player. This is a guy who, for his entire career, high school, college, NBA, kind of played as a sixth man. That was sort of his style. Dribbled the air out of the ball, got into some mid-range shots, was sort of a hooper's hooper kind of guy. Super skilled, could pop off for really big games. We saw it in the bubble as a rookie, and ever since then has a Sixth Man of the Year award. But his impact to an offense overall in terms of winning and all that kind of stuff, offensive rating for his team on the court, that stuff didn't always translate until this season. This season, you saw him scrap the inefficient mid-range shots. He's not dribbling it as much, even though he's had to lean back into that a little bit since the Jimmy Butler trade just because Miami's offense needed it. But his three-point rate has jumped up. His at-the-rim rate has jumped up. This is not just a guy dribbling the ball up the court and pulling up for threes. He's getting to the rim a lot more. He's getting to the foul line a lot more. He's talked about wanting to recreate Steph Curry's shot chart. And I think that's really cool. You just don't see guys 6 years into their career just make the decision. A guy who's been part of 2 finals teams, has a Sixth Man of the Year award, signed a contract that pays him more than $20 million a year, was a lottery pick in his draft, has had so much success relative to most basketball players in the world. You do not see a guy with that kind of resume 6 years into his career say, nope, not good enough. I'm going to change everything. And that's what he did. And I think he deserves a ton of credit for that. I think that kind of mindset change, is kind of one of the hardest things to do. You just don't see it a lot. And I think he deserves a ton of credit for it. So I've got Hero, Most Improved Player. Rookie of the Year. I went Stephon Castle. It was between Castle and Riza Shea for me. Jalen Wells came in on third. I friend of the show, Mike Shearer, made a really strong case for Riza Shea. I think he's deserving. I think his second half of the season was awesome. I think a lot of people stopped watching the Spurs basically after Wembanyama went down, even before De'Aaron Fox went. Like after Wemby got hurt, nobody really cared anymore. Castle's been awesome for them. And I actually do really care about what he looked like when that team was healthy with Chris Paul, with Victor Wembanyama, before they even got De'Aaron Fox. I just think he looked great. The efficiency numbers are what they are. I don't really care that much. I watch Spurs games, and he's just always making an impact. He's so smart. He's making the right read offensively with the ball in his hands, which Riza Shea does a really good job. And I go back to Mike Shearer's piece over at Basketball Poetry. Go ahead and read that. But like his movement off the ball is really impressive. He's just like a no frills, no nonsense kind of guy. And I love the way he's able to fit in. But I'm going to give more credit to Castle just because he makes stuff happen when the ball is in his hands. And he makes stuff happen defensively. He's just there's just more oomph in his minutes. He's more impactful. And I just think it's really hard as a rookie to make that kind of impact. Regardless of what kind of team you're playing on. Good team, bad team, it doesn't matter to me. There's oomph in Castle's game. He makes, again, the most underrated trait to me in the NBA is, can you make stuff happen? And Castle makes stuff happen. So he's my Rookie of the Year. Okay, final piece here. Again, sorry that we're going so long on the Monday monologue here, but it had to be done. MVP. Let's get to it. All right. So, I skipped Defensive Player of the Year. Sorry, guys. Defensive Player of the Year. All right. Draymond didn't make my ballot, and I don't know if I feel great about it. Evan Mobley did not make my ballot. Top 3. I don't know that I feel great about it. I don't think Mobley is the best defender in the NBA. I think there are times where he can be beaten one-on-one by bigger players, by wings, by really big wings. The isolation numbers, they're fine. If you want to vote Mobley as your DPOY, I'm okay with it. Honestly, I'm okay with it. He's great. He's awesome. I love Evan Mobley. I just can't sit here and tell you I think he's the best defender in the NBA, and it feels like it would be a little bit of a default pick to me. And I couldn't get there with him. With Draymond, I really grappled with maybe making him my Defensive Player of the Year. And maybe I should have him on my top 3. I couldn't get... I don't have... if you want to vote Draymond for Defensive Player of the Year, I have no problem with it. He's central to the Warriors' defense. A Warriors' defense that's been really good all year. And without Draymond, it all falls apart. You could argue he is the most valuable defender in the league. I don't know that that's what Defensive Player of the Year is as an award. Maybe it is. If you look at it as that and you vote Draymond, again, I have no problem with it. He has not been the best defender all season. I have watched the Warriors all year. There is no way you could tell me that the first 3-4 months, Draymond, he has not been the best defender all season. Evan Mobley was a lot better wire to wire. than Draymond was. But if your argument is that Draymond has been so good in the second half of the season that it doesn't matter what he did in the first half of the season, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because he has been that good. What he did against Giannis, the big plays he made against the Lakers, what he has meant to that team, playing center on a team that does not have a center, and Quentin Post is by height a center. He plays nothing like a center. This team, Kevon Looney is in and out of the rotation. There's only certain matchups where he works. Draymond has been so freaking good over the last 2 months that if your argument is that those 2 months were the best 2 months any defender has had by far all season long, and I'm going to vote Draymond because of those 2 months, I'm honestly, I give it a lot of thought. I'm honestly okay with it. If that's your argument and you want to make Draymond Defensive Player of the Year and you're going to vote him number one on this, I'm okay with it if that's your argument. But we have to recognize the beginning of the year, it wasn't looking like this. But because of Victor Wembanyama's injury and some other injuries and stuff like that, this is a wide open race. And if you think that those 2 months for Draymond were more valuable than any defensive stretch in the league this season, and you're going to vote Draymond number one on your Defensive Player of the Year ballot, I'm okay with it. I couldn't get there, so I don't have him in my top three. I value, again, consistency. I try to say consistent enough with it that I really did look at the balance of the year. So I went Amen Thompson number one. I went Lou Dort number two. I went Dyson Daniels 3. I could have went Draymond 3. It wouldn't have mattered to me. I don't really care. I think the Dyson Daniels thing, I think Stephen Noe over at Sporting News wrote a really nice piece about Dyson Daniels and the value of steals, and it really got me thinking about moving Daniels higher up. I put him on my first team all defense. I think he's been that good. I think what he does for that Hawks defense, his on-off numbers are not good, but he's always playing next to Trae Young, who's obviously a liability on that end. So that kind of burns his on-off stats a little bit. So I don't really count them with Dyson Daniels. I don't really look at them. His matchup difficulty is way up there. His isolation numbers are pretty good. He's been awesome. I went with him number 3. I just couldn't get there in terms of him being number 1. Again, the Stephen Noe piece, he did a really good job. It kind of talked more about the value of steals as a concept. And I just don't think Daniels as a one-on-one defender has been as good as my other two guys. So Dort, I thought I was going to go Dort when I sat down to do this. I really did. I thought Dort was my Defensive Player of the Year. And I thought I would have Zubac higher, and I ended up not having him in my top 3, but he made my short list. But I had Dort number 1 in my mind, but then I really sat down, looked at the numbers, looked at some other stuff, really thought about it. And you guys heard my monologue last week on Amen Thompson, and it kind of started then. I'm like, I kind of love this. Why am I not thinking about him for Defensive Player of the Year? And I think in the monologue I said I'm not going to vote for him for Defensive Player of the Year. To me, it's going to come down. It's going to come down to Dort, Mobley, Green, Zubac, these other guys. And then I kind of was like, I kind of sold myself on Amen Thompson. Why couldn't he be Defensive Player of the Year? And then you look at the numbers. The defensive dunks and threes has him right above Draymond in terms of his value defensively on the court. His isolation numbers, way up there. Matchup difficulty, up there. All the advanced stats, love Amen Thompson. And the biggest reason I think Houston made the jump from out of the playoffs to number 2 seed in the West, the biggest change from last year this year, Amen Thompson. Been the biggest development for them all year. And you don't see guys come in and replace a guy because of injury. Jabari Smith Jr. gets hurt. Amen Thompson replaces him at power forward or whatever position we want to call it. And he's so good that Ime can't take him out of the lineup. So he just becomes a starter. He guards every position, and he just makes impact play after impact play. So I said most of this on the monologue last week. If you really want an Amen Thompson deep dive, go to that last week's monologue. It still holds up, probably even more so now than it did even a week ago. But I haven't seen him I haven't seen a young player make this impact defensively and be this chaotic in a good way defensively since Kawhi, his second or third year. He is that good defensively. I said, you know what? I love this guy so much. Why not? I have no reason not to make him the Defensive Player of the Year. So he's DPOY for me. I voted Amen Thompson number 1. All right. Super long on the monologue. It's okay. bear with me. MVP here. Okay. This was harder than I thought it was going to be. I'm going to give you 3 for 5, and then I'm going to get into my top 2. I had Giannis, Tatum, Donovan Mitchell, 3 through 5. I'm there. I'm good with it. I gave you the Mitchell case in All-NBA. Giannis, Tatum, self-explanatory. I don't see how you don't have Giannis. You have to have Giannis 3. I don't know how you put anybody else there. He's been awesome. Unless you just like are way turned off by the smell of the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't think that's an excuse, but it's the only reason I could see not voting for him, and that's probably going to be why he's not a unanimous number 3. Tatum, Mitchell, they're there. I've had, going on back on my Bontemps poll, I went Jokic in the first round, and then I went SGA every round after that, including my final ballot to Bontemps. I had SGA number 1, and I had Jokic number 2. And then I sat down with it, and that, I think our ballots were due, I think that was a couple of weeks ago. And then everything in Denver's happening, and Jokic has that 61 point, was it a triple-double? I think the night after, I think that was the night that I submitted the poll, or maybe like the night before. And I try not to let like the recent games sway me that much. And the way I always look at it is I have to feel really compelled to move somebody else from to move somebody out of the number 1 spot. And I just didn't feel like I had to move Jokic on my poll. But then sitting down to actually do the ballot, I really thought about voting Jokic. I was surprising myself. I really thought about voting for Jokic. And it got to the point where I almost did it. I ultimately went with Shai. I stuck with Shai. This was maybe the hardest MVP that I've ever had to think about. I really think it's neck and neck. Both of these guys deserve it. I've seen a lot of people come out support Jokic. I don't think it's a done deal that Shai is going to win MVP. And this is totally anecdotal, but just talking to some different voters who actually vote for this award, reading some of the media stuff on it, there is a late push happening here for Jokic that I'm not sure is baked into some of the Vegas numbers. So I'm not telling you gambling advice. I'm just pointing it out. But here's where I landed on it. The Jokic supporters will throw every amazing stat at you for Jokic, and they are so incredible. They are amazing, amazing stats. They blow your mind. It blows your mind. You hear this, you hear these stats, and you're just like, well, how can I not vote for this guy? This is crazy. This guy has already a multiple-time MVP winner, having the best offensive season of his career. How can I not vote for this guy? Great argument. Made me want to vote for him. And then you see the Shai numbers, and they also blow your mind. Stuff that hasn't been done since Michael Jordan. And I'm just like, well, now I got to vote for Shai. You know, like the stuff he's done this year is absolutely insane. And the consistency of his scoring output. And a few weeks ago, I did a monologue on the importance of scoring. And I think points per game, we just sort of overlook it now. It's super important. At the end of the day, points are still the most important stat in the sport. More important than on-off, VORP, EPM, steals, rebounds, assists. More important than anything, points on the board. And you got to do it efficiently, but you got to put points on the board. And Shai does it both ways. He puts points on the board, and he does it efficiently. The defense part of this, there was a point where, again, mostly when I was thinking about Bontemps' power polls, I would have Shai. If I ever needed a little tiebreaker in my mind, I would go Shai because of what he is defensively. He's definitely more of a two-way player than Jokic. It's not been a good defensive season for Jokic. Ultimately, I didn't hold that against him in my final ballot as much as I thought I was going to. It maybe is a small factor in it, but almost nothing. I didn't really care. There's a lot. That's just not his role on the team. I don't think Shai has been as good defensively as the numbers suggest. I think he's been good. He's not been a negative, and I think there's games where Jokic is clearly a negative. His rim protection numbers aren't good. There's just stuff there that's not good with Jokic. So maybe it played a small factor, but ultimately it didn't for me. the wins here. This is more of a factor for me than the defense stuff. Shai's team almost won 70 games this year. The Thunder are dominant, absolutely dominant, and the Nuggets aren't. And the Nuggets fired their coach. And I'll be interested to see how the voters approach that. Is that a plus for Jokic? Oh my God, Jokic won 50 games on a Nuggets team that ended up having to fire the coach, or is there a stink on it? Almost the way that there might be a stink around Giannis, where hey, the season just didn't go the way that everybody thought it was going to go. You ended up firing your coach. It really is just sort of messy in Denver. And does that turn voters off of Jokic? I don't know. I think that's fascinating to watch here. Is that something that is a bug or a feature in terms of the Jokic case for MVP? I have no idea. And I think every voter will tell you something different. I think you could poll 100 voters, get 50 of them in one camp, 50 of them in the other, bug or feature. Ultimately, the wins, though, it matters. It matters more than defense stuff. Didn't swing me. Here's what swung me. Here's what is the difference to me for Shai and Jokic. I didn't want to get too caught up in the on-off stats because it's too noisy, and I don't like penalizing a player who has better teammates. I don't like it. It's not his fault that you have better or worse teammates. You want to get into valuable, that's fine. I don't think that that's what the spirit of the award is. I don't think the spirit of the award is who means the most for your team. I don't think that's what it is. I don't think that's what the founders meant when they created this award. I really don't. I think it was an award for the player who had the best season. I think it was the award for the player who had the best season. And at the end of the day, I think Jokic and Shai had equally awesome seasons. And that's why it was so hard. But to go back to the on-off stuff, because I'm looking for things I had to pick somebody. You look at Shai's on-off splits with the Thunder. I know that the teammate stuff is what it is. I think it's a little overstated how much better of a team Shai has than Jokic. You take Shai off of the Thunder, they're just fine. They're not good. They're not dominant. They're not close to a contending team. They're probably closer to Sacramento, which sounds crazy. But Shai does all of it for them offensively. Jalen Williams is very hit or miss in terms of an offensive player and specifically as a shot creator. There's nights where he's got the sauce. There's nights where he doesn't. Okay? Chet, in and out of the lineup. Injuries. Holmgren, in and out of the lineup. Hartenstein, in and out of the lineup. Injuries. All that stuff. Casey Wallace, fine. Not running your offense through him. At least you hope not for a long portion. There's awesome depth. You love the depth on that roster. But without Shai, that is not a team that we're talking about seriously in terms of winning the Western Conference. And you go to the on-off numbers. You take Shai off of the Thunder, they are still dominant defensively. But that team goes in the toilet offensively. They go damn near close to bottom 10 in the league in offensive rating. And what the Thunder are with Shai is one of the all-time most dominant teams in the regular season we've ever seen. And that counts for something. You take Shai off the Thunder, they are the Orlando Magic, a team that's in the play-in tournament in the Eastern Conference. That's what split it for me. Shai is the difference between being the Orlando Magic and one of the most dominant teams we've ever seen in regular season history. So I voted Shai Gilgeous-Alexander my MVP.